Alright guys, what is up? Welcome back to Avorion with LD7, and today we are going to be finishing up our turret mini-series by covering the salvaging turret type. So salvaging turrets are pretty good. They allow you to gather materials from wrecked ships, stations, damaged structures, all sorts of different things, to harvest materials, systems, turrets, other good stuff like that. So kind of the way salvaging turrets work. They're similar to mining turrets in that they require unarmed turret slots in order to be placed and operate. They also require miners as far as crew is concerned, as opposed to gunners with combat turrets. So the stats kind of broken down similar to the other turrets. You've got DPS, efficiency, and range. So DPS, that's how much damage it does. Efficiency is going to be how much percent drop chance you've got to get scrap or salvage or get a system or a turret. So the higher the efficiency, the better the turret. This one's only 13.9, and that's because it's just a regular salvaging turret as opposed to an R salvaging turret. We'll get to that in a minute. Range, like with all the other turrets, that's how far it will be able to fire, so 1.5 kilometers on this. That's pretty standard, 1.5 kilometers at Xanian level. It's a little lower at the lower tiers, but anyway. Slots, same as everything else. It requires that many slots, but it's for unarmed turrets with this one, so this turret takes 3 unarmed turret slots to be placed and operate. The last piece here is going to be kind of what the turret will work on. So it does no damage to shields, and the reason why they put that in is if you drop the shields on someone you're in combat with and you're close enough, so within the 1.5 kilometer range, you can use your salvaging turrets to do damage to hull blocks on opponent ships. So 403 DPS is actually pretty high when compared to some combat turrets you might find when you first get to the Xanian level. So that is a potential way to boost your DPS of your ship directly, is by using salvaging turrets. However, it will only work if there's no shields on the opponent. The other piece refines alloys into resources. That is talking about breaking down just scrap blocks into salvage or ore or what have you. Okay. So these are also energy weapons, so they do take a little bit of power from your ship in order to run. It's pretty small, especially like once you get a big enough generator on your ship. Like I'm in the hundreds of gigawatts on this one, right? Once you get above like the gigawatt level, the energy usage of your turrets isn't going to matter, except for the combat ones might. But salvaging and mining, it doesn't really matter or impact your energy usage all that much. So that's the basic salvaging turret. If I was to equip this and go over to a destroyed ship, we could harvest resources from that ship, which is going to be dependent on what tier material the ship was built out of. So let's say we destroyed a Xanian level ship and it was built out of Xanian blocks. If we were to salvage that ship, we would be gathering Xanian scrap and Xanian ore, and we'd have a potential to get Xanian level turrets and Xanian level systems, basically. However, in order to actually salvage that ship, we would need to have a Xanian, or well, technically a Trinium level turret or higher. However, in order to get the full utilization of your DPS efficiency and those types of things, increase the likelihood of getting turrets and resources from the blocks of the ship, you want to be at the same tier level as the resource you're harvesting. So you want to have Xanian if you're going for Xanian ships. Alright, the other type of salvaging turret is going to be the R salvaging, which we've got one here. And this is going to maybe have a lower DPS sometimes. It depends on the turret type. However, the efficiency will be higher than the standard type. So if you're going to be salvaging to get resources, the R salvaging is better because you have a higher likelihood of getting systems and turrets or scrap just in general from the blocks you're breaking. So the efficiency stat should be driving your decision when it comes to salvaging turrets and placing them. Anyway, the slots is the same. Range, it's a little bit better, but that's just luck of the draw on the turret. Slots, same thing, it's a little bit smaller, but sometimes it's a little bit bigger, whatever. This one takes more miners, but that's because it's a double turret as opposed to a single. Same thing, no damage to shields, will damage hull, and it breaks alloys into scrap metal. So the way our salvaging turrets kind of differ outside just the base stats and what you should expect to see is how you actually gather the material. So with your, well, it's not necessarily how you gather the material, it's more or less like how much cargo space you need. If you're going to be salvaging, you're going to need cargo space because the way you gather resources is by holding scrap inside of your cargo bay. You need to have pickup scrap enabled in order to salvage. You might want to have these other ones ticked on as well if you defeated a ship or a station or something. It's not necessary otherwise. And then you need pickup normal cargo turned on and ores turned on depending on the type of ship. So, alright, you need to have cargo space to store the scrap, which then can be refined at a resource depot into the material, whatever type. It'll be like Xanian scrap or Trinium scrap. If you take that to a resource depot, you can turn it into Trinium and Xanian, paying just the resource cost, which varies. So that's kind of how the base mechanic works. If you're using regular lasers, the efficiency is so low typically that you can probably get away with maybe 500 cargo space and you'll be able to salvage for a while. If you're using R salvaging, you probably want to have 1500 cargo space or more, just so you can store all the materials because you're going to get a lot of them. The other thing worth mentioning is there are dedicated sectors to kind of get scrap. They're called scrap yards. So if you find a scrap yard, there will be a bunch of damaged ships in the sector and one station typically, which is just a scrap yard. If you go to the scrap yard, you can buy what's called a salvaging or a scrap license, something like that, I forget. But it's the last option when you're interacting with the station. You click on that and you can buy a license. They last for a duration of time. I believe it's broken into 5, 15, 30, and 60-minute increments. So depending on how much time, it's going to cost more. Depending on the reputation you have with the faction who owns the scrapyard, it'll cost more or less. So that's kind of how that works. In those sectors, however, in order to gather and salvage materials from those ships, you have to have one of those scrap licenses or you have to destroy the station. That's the only two ways you can gather the resources from those ships. So if you don't want to go to war with whoever owns the scrapyard, you buy the salvaging license. Typically, I think a 60-minute one, if you're with good standing, is maybe like 100,000. It does depend on how close to the barrier in the center of the galaxy you are, or like where the station's located rather, because you have a higher likelihood of getting better materials the closer you are to the center. Outside of that, once you buy the license and you have your salvaging turrets equipped and empty cargo space to hold whatever you salvage, you go over to the damaged wreckages and use your turrets on them like you would an asteroid or firing your combat turrets at an opponent ship. It's the same mechanic. Left click is the default. You can customize that, whatever. You'll know what the key is because you will have been using it for the entire game up to that point. After that, as you break the blocks of the ship, you're going to gather scrap material and you'll have a chance to get like a system or a turret out of the block. The way you increase that likelihood of getting a resource drop or a system and turret drop, as you're destroying the ship, some blocks will be sparkling, like a specific color, and the color will match the resource level. So like if it's sparkling yellow, that means it's a Xanian level block and you have a higher chance of getting something out of it. So the way you kind of maximize your salvage license is you want to target those shiny blocks and you want to target the highest level material ships in the sector. So if you're at Xanian level, only do the Xanian ships, don't even bother with Trinium, it's not worth it. Anyway guys, that is basically how salvaging turrets work. If you enjoyed our little mini-series on turrets, and specifically this episode, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe as always. Check out the other episodes on my channel. I'll be sure to leave a link over to the rest of this series. That way you can kind of see the playthrough mechanics in case you want to learn more about the game. Anyway guys, if you enjoyed the content, we will be looking forward to your continued viewership, of course. Let your friends know what we're doing. And until next time, this has been LD7, and we will see ya.